universe, deli meats and technology have rarely intersected. It wasn't until ham and radio teamed up that the pairing of cold cuts and transistors became wonderful communications partners. And it's very possible that I have that all completely wrong. When's lunch? Radio has been around in several forms since the first successful radio signal was sent by Guglielmo Marconi in the late 1800s. One of the perhaps lesser-known uses of radio is ham radio.
Ham radio is a type of two-way radio. In a way, you can think of it like a walkie-talkie or a long-distance telephone call, but with no charges. And hams are actually people. They're radio operators, amateur radio operators.
While ham radio is purely for hobbyists, operators are often called upon during civilian emergencies. Ham radio is effective because you don't need a power grid in place to operate it. I met up with Kristen Galerno at the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation to learn more.
This is a ham radio.
It's radio, but this really looks like it belonged on an old Hollywood movie set.
Definitely.
When did it start?
So ham radio really got its start in about 1927, and that was when the Radio Act was put into place. And at that time, the government dedicated a certain amount of the radio spectrum band to these amateur radio operators.
Similar to broadcast radio stations, each ham operator was required to have call letters. If I'm WX1MO and you're YZ1KR, how do I find you?
So what you would do is you would find a open frequency. That means nobody's using that frequency. And then you would send out a message, CQ. And CQ means, is anybody listening? Please respond. And then you would start your peer-to-peer communication.
Well, this must have been absolutely thrilling, like in the 1930s. If you're in New Jersey and you suddenly are talking to somebody in the Congo.
Exactly. That happened all the time.
After a successful communication with another ham operator, it is proper etiquette to exchange addresses and to send a special type of postcard, known as a QSL card. The cards here and the equipment too all belonged to one man.
This actually belonged to a gentleman named Hamid Dermisovich, and his nephews donated this.
Wait, his first name was Hamid?
It was Ham. Isn't that perfect? Hamid Dermisovich.
That is just too perfect.
And he was active in Los Angeles from the 1920s all the way up into the 1990s. His story is really inspiring because he immigrates to the U.S. from Eastern Europe in the 1920s, and he only wants to do two things.
One, gain U.S. citizenship, and two, earn his ham operator's license.
This is his record of all the kinds of people that he communicated with from his station in L.A.
And they're quite beautiful.
They really are.
I mean, just the romance here of being a single user. Amazing.
It's sort of like you're really traveling the world through a radio.
Today, ham radio is still